Okay, can you see my screen? So first thing first, remember uh, every React application, right? It needs to make API call, right? So to make the API call, definitely we need to develop API, right? And also we always try to keep React code on in different code base. Of course, like different. It's running on the different port, and the API we write in different folder or different repository, or you can call different source code, and that runs on different port. So very quick example before I do anything, I will show you. So this is the API, right? And this is running at port 5000, right? I am simply restarting this. So nothing has changed. This is exactly same, right? No difference. If you see your code, if you might have written your API, so exactly same, right? Express, body parser, controller, create app, set the body parser, and then post for user registration, then post for user auth, right? Running on port number 5000, right? So far so good. Now the React code. Uh, So very simple. The React code, the initial state initialized by for first name, last name, email, password, and every input element we need to set on change and the value. So value we read it back from the state, and on change basically modify the state. So here on change, right, which basically update the state, and event dot target dot value. You need to read the React.js documentation. So they explained what should be the syntax for reading the value, right? Right. So far so good. And here the button, the submit button, here the submit button, the type is submit. So what does it mean? It means it will submit this form. So here I have on submit, right? And we do want to prevent the default, and the reason is we don't want page should be refreshed or posted again. um, and here's a, so reading the user from the state, assuming that you will type and change your form, and then this is using the fetch. This is your API URL, right? Method is post, and header is application slash JSON, right? And the body we always stringify before posting data, and reading the JSON back from the response, and just for testing purpose simply alerting the stringify version, right? Okay, so far so good. Now let's test it. So this is my React app. So let's quickly test it. So look at here, when I try to submit, um, I see the error, right? Here in the network trace, see, look at here, right? In network trace, you will not see any problem. It says, hey, registration and method type is options. But here in code, we said method equal to post, right? So why this change to the options? So the reason is what browser does. Uh, let's say, let me draw a graph to quickly explain this concept. So what happened is, let's say this is your, this is you as a user, right? And this is the browser, and this is React server, and this is API server. So this is React code, right? Or or you can say server running React, right? At port, what is our port? 3000, right? Let's, yeah, 3000, right? And this API server running API at port 5000, right? And this is you as a user, and this is your browser. Let's say Chrome browser, right? So you basically, you as a user, right? What you do is you basically type URL in the browser, right? That's what you do, right? So you are a user, you just typed it, right? So this localhost 3000 actually goes to the uh, UI server, right, which is running at 3000 port, right, and return the HTML. If you see here, what you got is nothing but HTML. If you go to the elements, right, so this is HTML you got. See, so this is all HTML you got, right? So far there is no interaction with the API, right? Because your default 3000 returns the registration page, which doesn't make any API call, right? In this example. So now here, when you let's say click on submit button, right? So let's say type something. Um, See what happened if you look into your code. So on submit button, right? This is on submit. So we are making the API call, right? And that API call, if you see here, it's running at 5000 port, right? So what happens when you click on submit? So what browser does is, in case of so this what happens like in the next time. Uh, Now what browser see that your API call is running at port number 500, right? This is running at 5000, sorry, not 500. And this is running at 3000. So what Chrome browser does it? Whenever it sees that, okay, your application, the UI code is running at 3000, but your API is running at 5000. So what it will do is, it will first make the options call. So first make options call. So why? So it just want to make sure that server does support cross resource origin sharing. So if you remember the course, right, the full form of course is basically this one, CORS course equal to cross origin request sharing. So server has to support this. So it's basically asking the options rather than using the post. It actually internally changed to the options and just asking server, hey server, do you support cross origin request sharing? So in our case, because in the API, it does not. So if you go to the network tab, right, and look for here options and look for the response header. So look at here. Come on. See the request header and look for the response header. See in response header, it doesn't say that we allow it, right? So now what happened is, because of that, Chrome browser fails this. Read the error. fail to load this URL, response to pre-flight request. So actually this request, the options, so this is called pre-flight request. Okay, so response to pre-flight request doesn't pass access control check. No access control allow origin header is present. So what he is what it is saying is, so technically your options here, options, this should return header with access control allow origin equal to true or a star. So this is complaining, saying, hey, no access control allow origin header is present on the requested resource origin. So, so requested resource. So origin localhost 3000 is therefore not allowed access. So that's why saying the server running at 5000 doesn't allow localhost 3000 to make the API call. So if an opaque response server you need, set the request mode to no course to fetch the resource with course disabled. So there is two ways to solve it. One it is saying is, in your API call, set the request mode equal to no course. So here let's try this. So one option it says is, in your client side code, right? It's saying in the client side code, set the request mode. What was the request mode setting? Fetch. In the end, let's search there. Oh, it's mode, M-O-D, mode, not the request. Mode, okay. So you can set mode as no course. So basically you are telling the browser, hey browser, ignore it. Ignore the course check. Okay. So that's one way to do that. So let's quickly test it. So if you see here, I think something happened to server. Come on, server. So look at here. Now it actually made the API call, right? But server call is failing. Let's see why it's failing. We have a server problem. So what we'll do is very quick. We'll use a different email ID. Let me use your okay, it's still failing. So our server is failing now. Let's see. $set is empty. You must specify field like $set field. Oh, it's saying its field is empty. So technically what's happening is this no course is not working. Okay, so client side fix doesn't work. So let's fix in other way. So let's fix the server and let's tell server that hey, add course. So this is npm module add course, right? And then simply course go to require course, and here we'll say app dot use course. Let's restart. And let's now come back and test everything one more time. So if you see, this time this worked, right? If you see, look back to the code here, right? So it successfully called the API, then it read the user object, and it returned with this alert, right? Look for the ID. It should have the ID because this ID is generated by the database. So what does it mean is, so basically your server, so whenever you're writing a server code, you must include this course. If you don't include this code, so what will happen is, as per this diagram, because your React code is running at port number 3000, but your API is running on 5000, so cross origin request sharing will fail. So you have to actually enable your server to allow the cross origin request sharing, which is called course, right? So that's what we have done it here. So this npm module course, you have to just say app.use course, and then it takes care of it. Okay, now let's focus on React code, right? So what we learned so far is so normal registration, right? So now if you go to the database, see the find, now you will see one object here, right? With email. Now let's say for quick testing, Neetu Kumari password Neetu. See, it actually successfully registered the Neetu Kumari. Now for testing purpose, check the database. See, now database got a new entry, right? So now let's read more. So this is like basic form, right? Now there are so many problems here. So first problem is, let's say here I type anything and I submit, it worked. But if you see, this email is not a email, right? This is not a valid email, right? And also, like, let's say if I change this and I kept empty, see, this is empty, and I click on submit, it again worked. Why? Because it passed first name last name as an empty. So how, as a developer, I can stop this, I can fix it. So I don't want to submit my form unless these are not populated, right? You understand what I'm saying? Hello? So you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, hi, do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, see, very quick testing, right? I'm just going to here. So look at here, this is a form, right? If you see, everywhere you will see the form concept, right? So look at here, when I click on login, see here, the email or phone number you have entered does not match account. Okay. Now look at here. Whenever something is empty, it tells you, hey, you know what? The email or phone number you entered. Oh my god, this is so weird. Okay, let's look for different application. Uh, which one? Let's say Amazon. Let's say here, if I do not provide the email and I click on empty, come on. See, enter your email or mobile phone number. Do you see this warning? So this is good user experience. The Facebook user experience was not good, right? So this is what we want. What we want is here, if I do not provide first name, last name, email, or anything, it should warn me. There should be a warning. So right now there's no warning. See, every time it just submit the form to server, right? But technically it should check on the client side before it submit to the server, right? So how we can do it? So there are many ways to do it. One is let's say so here only we can write a code, if user dot first name is empty. So we can write a code like this, and we'll say, hey, uh, first name is empty. This is dirty way. If I do this and refresh the Chrome, so now if I submit it, see I got, hey, first name is empty. And if you see what happened, it actually alerted me and then submitted as well. So I need to stop it, right? So we have to write return alert first name is empty, so that we don't want to uh, move to the next step, which actually making the API call. Now if I submit first name is empty, it is stopped. It did not submitted the API call, right? So do you follow me? Hello? Right? So now other ways like, hey, I don't like alert. Can I write some message here? So let's say we have to write a message, right? So here, let's say we will call it first name error. So let's initialize this. So what we can do is, if first name is empty, we can set state, this dot set state, right? And here we are saying first name is empty, right? And we can set the state, and here just after the first name we can put a text message, this dot state dot. So this is like a very simple way to set the state here, right? And then read the state here, right? Very simple way. So now come here, and if I submit, see what happened. First name is empty, right? So let's quickly do a little bit styling, and here we'll put the color as red. Right, so let's access this, come back here. See here, right? First name is empty. So this looks good, but now think about it. How many times I have to do this? So let's do this. So one for first name, then email, then password, right? Last name, email, and last name is empty, email is empty, password is empty, right? Now refresh it. Let's come back here. So look at here. I click on submit. It says first name is empty. So now you see the problem. Actually, everything is empty, but the way we wrote our code, uh, yeah, it check for one and return. Right? It doesn't come to here because we have written return here, return, right? So let's do this. Now let's say first name is filled, right? So now if I submit, it says, hey, last name is empty. Why? Because here we did not change. See, the first name is still, this should be actually last name, right? The error message, no error, password error. And what we'll do is we will display these all error message here in the code. Remember, code is basically whatever you will ask your code to do, code will do it. If you don't ask, it will not do it. Okay. So now we have wrote code to display all the error. Right, now let's see. Let's refresh. Now as usual, click on submit. It only display error about the first name, right? Now let's type for first name. Now click on submit. If you see, now it says last name is empty, but this is still there, right? Yeah, because we did not see, we set this once, right? We set the state once here, but we did not wipe it out for here. So if you see, it's getting messy, right? It's getting complicated slowly. See how much complicated this is. So here submit is first name was empty. Now I type the first name. Now click on submit. So now because here we set this empty if last name has error, so that's why this become empty and this has the error message, right? But now if you put out this and say this, email is empty, but this problem is still there. So what I'm trying to explain is you can handle by writing your own code, right? But that code is getting messy, complex, right? So how we can deal with it, how we can make it very smooth. So let me quickly give you a demo. So this is one of the application. Uh, Let me go to the sign up page. So this is the registration page, right? And look at here. I tap on sign up and it actually warned me about all the field which is empty. It say, hey, your first name is required, last name is required, email is required, password required. Now look at here. When I type the list, what happened is because now first name does has some value, so that error message is gone, right? When I type this, now this error message is gone, right? Now when I type this, now look at here, the required message is gone. Now it says invalid email address, right? Because for email there's two type validation. One is it should not be empty, and second is it should be the valid email format, right? So now if I type password, right, not only that, let's say if I type just 4 characters, it says, hey, password length is less than 6 characters, right? So this is what we want. Now let's say if I type some password, both password did not match, right? So technically, So both should match. So what this is, so this is all about form validation. What is this? Form validation. We do want to validate the form before we submit to the server, the client side validation, right? And we try to do here, but code become very messy, right? We tried here, right? If you have, think about it, if you have to implement exact this, how many if else block you have to do and how many combination you have to update, right? So how we can solve this problem? So basically there is a npm module called react final form. Okay, so we will use this react final form. So I will just explain how to use this and how this make our life easy. Okay, so this is react final form and we will use the simple implementation. Go through their documentation. So steps installation. Okay, so install two npm module, so react final form as well as the final form, because the team who developed this, they have created core module called final form and then extension of that for react, because they use the same code for angular as well, vue.js as well. So very quick, let's do it. I use yarn, so I will simply do yarn install. You there, Nitu? Nitu, you there? Hello? So here I simply install two npm module, React Final Form and the Final Form, right? So what I'm doing is I'm simply following their documentation, right? So now the next documentation says use the form and field as a React component, right? So I will simply copy very quick, come to my code, and it says okay, import these. So I just imported form and field React component, and then look at here. What it is saying is wrap your existing form by this code, this piece of code, right? So you should memorize it. You know, there is no logic, because they have designed this format. You should simply memorize as a blind developer. So look at here, we'll simply dissect this. So form is this React component. It has the on submit, right? And then you have validate. So validate is the function which does the has all the validation rules, and this is the render. So inside the render, look at here. So it's technically, if I let's dissect in a good manner. Let me, so let me show you this by dissecting this information, this code. So technically, look at here. This code started here and closing it here, right? So I'm simply deleting this entire to understand the code structure. So this is the form, FORM form, React component given by React final form, right? So this is format you need to remember. So form as a tag, it has three attributes: on submit, validate, and render, right? And what render does it? So look at here, inside the render is nothing but a function, right? This is arrow function. If you see here, right, this is arrow function, right? So if I control X, so this is a structure, right? So this is form structure, and what this says is this is the renderer function. So pass a function for me, right? So this is the function, right? This is arrow function, right? If you remember, this is arrow function, right? So look at here carefully. This arrow function, and what this form automatically gives you is three things: handle submit, pristine, and invalid. So handle submit is nothing but submit your uh, form. So right. So basically, how to handle your form to submit, right? So invalid tells you which field is invalid based on the rule. So based on the rule, you define invalidate function. It tells you which field is invalid. Pristine basically tells you, sometime, let's say, let me refresh this to show you what does it mean by pristine. So pristine means pure, you know, dirty means, dirty. So what happens, yeah, when you tap it here, let's say, tap it here. I just tap it and I did not type anything, just click there. Look at here. I just click there and then I remove my mouse cursor to somewhere else. Then it shows me that, hey, your first name is required. Why? Basically, it actually detects for your cursor position, and whenever you click here, it understands that you are supposed to type something. Then you made a decision not to type. So pristine means it's no more pristine. It become a dirty. Whenever you type, when you click your cursor here, it's no more pristine. So basically, this pristine gives you status of that. Hey, is your field is pristine or not? Right? So this is a structure, and inside this you have to write your React component, right? So let's very simple. Let's use this. So what we'll do is I'm just going to copy this form here. So this form, right? I'm going to first copy here. Then I will cut this entire form code, right? And I'm going to paste it here, right? So far so good. So now this handle submit, right here on submit, let's look into their documentation. As I always suggest you read the original documentation. So when you're reading about React Final Form, come to this GitHub site and read about their documentation. If you're reading anything about React.js, go to React.js documentation and read it there. Okay. So very quick here, see the on submit. On submit, I should be using this handle submit, not my own, right? So what I will do this handle submit. So I will use this, right? And let's say remaining, yeah, form, that's it. Now this on submit is my own. So this is my own on submit. So I'm saying this dot on submit because this you have to pass it, right? Then you have to pass the validate function as well. So let's quickly see their validate example. Um, they haven't mentioned here, so I will scroll a little bit down to find out the validate example. I'll simply search validate. So this is a structure of validate: value, all value. Okay, and let's look for the example. Come on, dude. Okay, so they have example. So let's go and check the example. Oh, come on, example. Okay, let's go back to the original. Let's look for their sample example. So best way is like they have a, uh, up and running sample example. So let's say here, simple example, right? Uh, so simply tap on this. So it's actually completely up and running your JavaScript code. So let's always it's always good to look into their example to understand how they done it. So here, yeah, see in this example they have not used the validate. So what I will do is I will look for their second example. So I will go back. So this one synchronous record level validation, synchronous field level validation. So I will use this synchronous field level validation. So tap on this. So you have to actually read more. You have to understand their documentation. So that's why in the beginning it takes time. And what I'm trying to explain is always look into original source of documentations. So now look for their form. Yeah. So look at here. This is field level validation. So look at here. Validate required, right? So what it is saying is validate required. So where is required? Here. So there is two things, right? One is like field level validation. So instead of doing validate here, okay, let's move to the next because now we have to use a field. So far we only used this form, right? We did not use this field. So let's go into their other example here only. Uh, so if you see here, right, the same thing, first name, last name. So let's quickly look into their example. So what this says is, let's say this is your field, right? So put the name and your validate function, and inside that put what you want to render, right? So this gives you input and you have to just spread it. And see, in the beginning you might do simply copy paste, uh, but more you actually read, then more you will understand. So I'm just changing one. So let's look at here the first name, right? So I'm first working on first name. So what's going to happen here is, uh, so look at here. So field first name validate required. So required is a function at the top. It's declared here, which is simply looking for if it is undefined, then return a message called required. So this is a ES6 function. So now we can use like this with the field. So you have to say this dot required, right? And the label is first name input. So you look at here. So ES6 destructuring. So this input actually gives everything on change. So look at here when we wrote the simple one, right? When we wrote the simple form, so we actually define value and on change, right? So what React final form gives you is you don't need to define your own value and on change. So they basically pick up your name property. Listen what I'm saying. They pick up your name property and internally they implement this to the generic function. The reason is, right, if you see what we did before, right, the simple handling of each individual field. If you look at here carefully, all code is same. Only thing changes the property name. So what they have done is they converted to a generic function and internally implemented, and they use it, right? So so what we have to do is we have to simply use their input and apply this here. Because part of the input object, they have all the functions like value, on change, everything, right? And look at here, meta.error. So this meta gives you if there is any error, and meta.touched is what I was trying to explain before. So meta.touched is basically when you click but you decided not to write anything. It means we are going to display the error message, right? So this is the one which controls the touching part. So in case of any error or touch happen, display the error message, meta.error. So this is error message coming from here. So this required gives the error message. Okay, so very quick, let's say this first name, this was our old code. So simply remove that, and here span just for quick quick styling. We'll put the color red. Okay, so what we have done is we only converted first name using React final form, right? So we do have this validate function, the field level, right? Field level required function, the validate function, which actually returns your input and meta. So this is your label, and this is your text field, and you don't need to write your internal implementation of state management. So what we can do is we can simply delete this. We don't need the first name here. So we just change one. So I just deleted only one. I deleted the first name, right? And also this first name error. So now what I'm trying to show is, so look at your code, how it's become small. So if you see that I just used a form and field, now I'm deleting my logic for state management. So I just did for one, then I will do for remaining. So let's first quickly test it. Okay, okay, let's just load. Still loading, loaded, right? So now look at here, right? First testing, I just clicked here and I decided not to write anything, and I'm moving it out. See, the required came, right? Now if I type something, let's say, whenever I type, see, that's gone. Now look at the what's happening. If I delete anything, required came. If I type something, required gone. Which is very good user experience, right? So that's why this is the power of using the React final form. So I was just trying to explain uh, before using the React final form and after using the React final form. So what you get once you actually use the React final form instead of writing your own form validation, form handling the form validation, right? So very quick, it's up to you what you want to write. So you can say, hey, you know what, uh, required, or you can say field is empty, for example, right? Anything you can write, up to you. Let's see here. See, field is empty. So you decide your message, right? So I will simply put it back required. and here if you see, if you want your label should be in the new line, so all our styling you handle it, right? So now what I'm going to do is I will very quickly copy the same thing, right, and implement for the remaining email password. Submit, you don't need to change anything because that's not a field, that's a button. Yeah, all the text field. So this for last name, this is for email, and this for password. So let's change very quick. So remember, this name is very important here. So name tells you the name basically used for your JSON property. So name decides what should be your JSON property. Last name, you can have your placeholder. All code here is same. Then email, 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 password, password. Here type will change to the password. Yeah. Placeholder will field name, right? The password. Right. Now what we'll do is we'll delete all of our handler code we wrote. See, all this handler code is not needed, so not even these all states. If you see that, now what we have is just on submit, and also in the on submit we'll delete this all custom code we wrote initially. We don't need this because React final form gives us. So what we need right now is um, just how to read the data. So we'll come back there, but first the client side form validation, right? So I simply deleted all the code related to form validation, right? Now let's come back here, right? Looks good. Now let's look at here. I am just clicking on the last name field, and I decided not to write. Now it says, hey, it's required, right? Now if I say email, I decided not to write, right? Now not only that, see, I click on submit. So what it is doing is it's running validation rule for all the fields. Now if I type something, so that's no more invalid, right? So that's gone, right? So you see the very good validation rules by just using a few line of code instead of writing our messy code, right? So that is the purpose of using the React final form. Okay. So now what we will do is now we need to read the JSON data, right? Whatever you type it. So let's come back to their sample example. In the on submit, let's say in on submit how it is reading the data. So look at here the values. So we don't need to use the event. We will simply use the values, and we don't even have to do this prevent default because the React final form does it for us, so we don't have to do that. So here simply pass these values and done. Now let's test it. Let's come to here. So let's type it. Click on submit. See, it was successful, right? Because API call was successful. You can come back to database. You can see one record here, right? So now our this form field is working fine, because if you don't type anything, it will not even allow you to submit. See, I click on submit, but nothing is happening. Why? Because form is not valid, right? So you have to type something to make it valid. So this is use of React Final Form. So quick recap. Uh, if you see here, that's why you have to first understand the core concept of HTML form element. So this is form, right? And these are input, right? And then without using React Final Form, you have to write so many line of code to do the client-side validation. Also, taking care of on-chain event, right? And then setting the value, which we did before. So that basically force you to write so many line of code. And even if you write so many line of code, you cannot achieve that good user experience. So that's what React Final Form comes in the picture. So React Final Form gives you two things: form and field. So form is your wrapper, right? And then this is your form field, and you use handle submit given by the render function of the React Final Form. And this on submit is your on submit. And then wherever you have field, you define your field, you define the label, all the styling you want to do, and you want to display the error message, so you have to write it here. It doesn't do automatically. Then you come to here, the other field, last name, same thing, email, same thing, right? So now let's say, for example, if you want a different validation rule for email, so you can define your own function, email validation. Let's say I just type it here, and I will come to here, right? Now this is nothing but arrow function. Let's say I want more rules, so I will. So end of the day, it should return some message. Okay. So now what I'm doing is I'm simply doing the basic of JavaScript, right? So if, let's say, value is not defined, I will say return email is required, right? Now if even a value is non-empty, so now I want to check for email format, right? Check for the email format. So we will do the regex validation. So let's look for sample example how to do regex validation. Does this guy have? Not here. I do have in my sample code. So let me open that. My sample code for email validation using regex. So look at here, I can have my own defined. Let's say here is validate password. So you can write whatever you want, and this is validate email. So if it is empty, return required. Otherwise, I will simply apply the regex rule, right? So come back here. So this is quick and dirty way. And if all validation rule is passed, so return the null, right? So what we have done is we actually added a separate validation rule for email validation. We define it here, and we only for this field we applied it, right? So now come to here, sample one, the React app is running, so let's quickly test it. So email, right? So this email field, you tap it here, you decided not to make any change, so it say, hey, email is required. So you type something, right? Now look at here, I type something that is gone. Now if I move cursor away, so it looks like some problem. Okay, let's look at this problem. It should say, hey, your email is invalid format. I don't know why it did not say that. Required. Let's refresh to make sure it does the right code. Yeah, see now it says invalid email address, right? Because even if you type something, it's no more empty. But for email, you want to make sure it's a valid email address. Now, if you see here, if I use this, now error is gone. Why? Because format is okay now, right? So this is the purpose of separate email validation, right? And your submit button is as is. We did not change anything, right? So this is what we learned, how to create form in React, um, and we learned how to use React Final Form npm module to write or handle client-side validation in React very easily, right? So now let's understand how to do the styling, right? So look at here, this is pretty much basic, right? So how to do the styling, right? So styling, right? There are so many ways to do the styling. So styling of React components. One is like write your own CSS class and apply it, right? So this is one way. You follow me? So what does it mean? It means let's say this first name or this field name or this submit, right? Submit button. I want to apply my own style here. So I can actually start writing style. Let's say color equal to blue, for example. Come back to here. Get it to refresh. Refresh. Why so? It's taking time. Compiling. Wait for it. So it's getting reload. See the color become blue, right? So yeah, so you can write your own CSS class and apply it. That's one way. Second way is use the existing CSS library. Okay, so one of the example is Twitter Bootstrap. So Twitter is a company and they have made their own CSS library public. So how we can use it? Very simple. Go to TIW. Come on. Twitter Bootstrap. Simply search for this. Twitter. Come on. So here, right, this is old version. So go to here. Okay. So click on this link, Bootstrap. So Bootstrap is a most popular HTML, CSS, and JS library. But here we will only use the CSS part because we are using React, right? And the core Bootstrap use the ES5 and ES6 JavaScript, which we cannot use in our React code. So I'm just waiting to load this. Oh, come on, it's so slow. Oh, it's very slow. I don't know why. So for now, you simply write a basic form. Don't focus on styling and let it be simple. So for your homework, develop the registration form and the login form by following the example I shared here, right? And let me know when you complete the homework. Okay, you there, Nitu? Hello, did you sleep? Hello, hello, can you hear me? Anyway, I'm just ending this class, and as a homework, complete